To be fair to you, you said all along, as soon as he left Rangers, went to Villa, this is risky. This is a risky appointment. It's risky for Gerrard.
Yeah, I think it was risky for both parties, but more so for Gerrard because the direction of travel that he perceived himself to be on was Rangers, go and win things up there, but by the way, winning one tournament out of 9, and then moving into the Premier League where people were building up this narrative that stepping stone into Liverpool. And I never subscribed to that view. And this idea that Stevie G and Steven Gerrard, the player has got to be separated from the manager. Now, I said from the outset, and there's no great glee in this, that I felt this was a job that was going to be incredibly difficult for him to do. If the owners had upward ambitions, he was going to be put under pressure relatively quickly because they didn't bring him in to hold water. They brought him in to excel. So I always felt that there was a huge amount of jeopardy with this. But it's almost like one of those, I described it with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer after they beat PSG in the Champions League, an unavoidable mistake, which is that both parties are looking at it through a set of eyes. The reasons why Steven Gerrard ended up at Aston Villa is, I would imagine, because of Christian Purslow. And the reasons why he probably lasted as long as he did might well have been because Christian Purslow didn't want to back away from perhaps the endorsement he gave the owners to bring Gerrard in the first place. He just, to me, I changed my view on him slightly because I could see more of the gravitas that he brought to bear when he first walked through the door. And I always felt that Gerrard went to Rangers and that his backroom staff were incredibly important. I didn't see the Steven Gerrard manager that I felt was going to be someone that was going to be ultimately successful. But when I saw him come to England, I thought, oh, actually, I get some of the hype. I get some of the background noise. He does hold himself well. He does present a good, strong image in front of camera. And then as the weeks and months went past, you began to look at it and go, well, that's all well and good. That's me buying into the BS that goes with Steven Gerrard, the player. Let's look at Steven Gerrard, the manager. And it goes back to my original school of thought, and sometimes your gut feel is the best one and keep with it, is that this was a hugely risky appointment for Gerrard. And I don't know where it takes him now, because Villa are, after a year, in precisely the same place as when Gerrard came in, with probably a handful of players now like Coutinho that are millstones around their neck because they've got players that nobody else really wanted. If you've got £147 million player you can get for 10 million quid, there's a clue in the room.
You see, that's the question, Graeme. On Friday in Glasgow, for a start, many of the people at the Chris Boyd lunch, a charity lunch in Glasgow, some of them were Celtic, many of them were Rangers fans, still aggrieved that Gerrard left Rangers in the fashion he left. So there's not a lot of sympathy around for Steven Gerrard in that part of the world. That's what I perceived. So I was joined on stage by Jamie Carragher. Before that, I spoke to Cara, and of course nobody knows Steven Gerrard better than Jamie, and I said to him, in your view, what's next for Steven?
I think it'd be a time for reflection, obviously, whenever any manager loses his job. But I think with Steven Gerrard and players of his sort of stature in the game, and also how you know the rewards he's had from the game, they don't need to take a job right away. And it's just, I think they'll look at that and think, I'll wait for the right job. Now, whether that Stevie wants to go back in, I'm not so sure. But the 3 jobs he's taken, Liverpool, youth team, obviously a huge club. Glasgow Rangers was obviously a giant of a football club in Scotland. He turned that club around. And Aston Villa, the biggest club in the Midlands and one of the biggest clubs in the country. So he's picked and choose big football clubs with great history, and I think he'll wait for something similar to come along. Otherwise, I don't think he would go back in. But that's only me. That's not Steven's words.
Will his pride be dented, Jimmy?
Oh, of course, he's a winner. You've seen that throughout his career. Champions League finals, captain of his country in World Cups. There's a job he's done in Scotland at Rangers, and this is the first probably one where you'd look at his footballing career where it hasn't gone as well as he would have liked. So he's had a good run up until now to get to over 40 without having too many disappointments. But there's no doubt this will be a big one for him.
You see, Jamie was saying that the profile of Gerrard and the profile of the clubs that he's managed, Rangers, you know all about Rangers, Graeme, Aston Villa, big clubs. Is his profile still such that he's in line to manage another big club at this time?
No, I don't think so. I think
has he got to take 2 steps backward to go one forward?
Yes, he'll have to drop down the league. I think Championship clubs would still want him. I can't see.
Is Steven Gerrard going to manage in the Championship?
Well, why not? You know, you go down there and do a good job, get them up, do well, and then get a bigger one. But I don't see any sort of, as Cara alluded to there, I don't see any big clubs in the Premier League being interested in Steven. I mean, it's an almighty blow to him. I mean, what's happened to him is an almighty blow. And again, what Cara said, this is the first time he's had negativity in his football career. You know, it happened to me when I was 19. I was at Spurs. I thought I was a bee's knees, but they didn't think I was ready for the first team, so I badgered them and they sold me to Middlesbrough. And that just made me more determined. And I'm sure, you know, Steven Gerrard has shown a steely determination throughout his playing career. And he'll show that again this time. Whether he comes back or not, I would imagine financially it's not a necessity. But his pride will be sorely dented. And I would, and I do a column in the Daily Mail on a Sunday, and I said, go down the Ranieri route, where
Meaning what?
well, he's had 22 jobs, and in 50% of those jobs, he's lasted a year or less. And the foreigners, there's no disgrace in getting a sack. There's no disgrace in not being successful at a football club as a manager. Just circumstances, a bit of bad luck, injuries to key players, whatever it may be, and go again. If it's in them, it might not be in them. You know, we can't second guess. He's been tremendously successful as a player.
Yeah, but Ranieri's credibility was called into question because there's so many clubs.
But I think
Gerrard's not going to do that.
But again, I can't speak for him. I think, see, my experience of playing and working on the continent is there's informed coaches that come here. It's not like a black mark against your name when you're not successful at a particular job. And these boys they must interview really well. They seem to get job after job after job without being terribly successful.
But as Cara alluded to there, Gerrard's pride will be hurting at the moment.
This is the first time.
So he doesn't want to have that experience again.
That's what makes you.
Well, then you judge the measure of the man, don't you? Because we can all find things in when things are going well, everyone's great. When it's adversity, you judge the character of a man.
Exactly.
I don't think, and this is a sweeping statement, at this level he's got it. I don't think he's got it. And I think he's had ample time at Aston Villa. And people say, well, it's only been a year. But in a year, you get to understand what someone... 3 months, you don't. You know, you can't judge the Watford model and say that's anything to be admired. That's their model. That's fine. They do things how they want to. But in a year, if you roll forward a year and things are actually no better, in fact, arguably worse... You've fallen out with people, you've made decisions, the style of football that you're playing isn't particularly easy on the eye and doesn't look particularly cohesive, and you're starting to pare back in interviews. You're starting to talk about, you know, getting out of the woods, and maybe you will, maybe you won't. You're starting to lose the luster and lure. And there's a problem for Gerrard and people like him, is that people refuse to separate the two. He is not Stevie G. He's not that person anymore. He is either a manager, because his playing career is academic now. That's for the birds. People can use that as a reputational scenario, but it's like a stick to beat him with. I don't think that he will find himself in a situation where he gets too many opportunities to manage in the Premier League in the near future. And if he doesn't come back in relatively soon, irrespective of the name, he starts to become part of the past.
You see, it's a bit like Roy Keane, isn't it? You know, he was a fabulous player. Would what Roy Keane did as a player count now when he goes for a job as a coach, stroke manager anywhere?
Not now.
So, and I think that's the way the game has evolved. I mean, it's been a really sore weekend for Steven Gerrard. In football terms, okay, we've lost big games, I'm thinking.
But
do you agree with Simon that he's not cut out for the Premier League, Gerrard? To manage in the Premier League?
I think no, I can't agree with that. Because I think you just never know. You get another job, different circumstances, you get a bit of luck, whatever. But this has been a really sore weekend for Steven, given that you lose your job. Yeah. The new guy comes in, he's done nothing with them. You can't be giving him any over 2 days. You cannot give him a different head, play a different way, a different style, different time. So they've gone out and they've gone and smashed.
But I didn't say it for shock effect a year ago.
No.
I said a year ago, this will not, in my view, this will not work out. I think this is a huge risk, more so for Steven Gerrard, right, than for Aston Villa, because they'll replace him. Easy enough. Once he's been sacked for failing, it sticks with you. Now, you can rebuild, and of course, nothing lasts forever. You know.
So what should he have done?
It's difficult. It's difficult because the choice is there and you're confronted with it. When you're looking at it and saying, what's my next step? You know, Mick Beale made a choice last week to stay with what he felt was the right thing to do rather than go to Wolverhampton Wanderers. And I admire that to some extent. Some people say, well, it's limiting ambition. And other people would say, well, actually, I'm going to build my knowledge, I'm going to build my base, and I'm going to build it upon a solid foundation. Now, I don't think he built on a solid enough foundation at Rangers to say that he was a manager to arrive in a situation with Aston Villa where it's a big club with big expectations, billionaire owners. They're not going to sit on their hands. They're going to want you to change the direction from the way the team plays to what their performance is. And I did not think that Gerrard had that in his locker at this moment in time in his career. So now he's taken that decision, and that's his to make, and out of it comes a complete diminishing of him. You had the Aston Villa fans, and for what they're worth in terms of fans shouting and screaming, telling him to get out of their football club. Now, that's not the Steven Gerrard that people think of, is it?
No.
To his credit, the way he handled it, you've mentioned it already. He fronted up. He said, "It's down to me. It's all about me."
He had no choice.
He had no choice.
Other managers go down a different route.
Okay, well, what
Other
next for
managers
Villa?
go down a very different route.
After this
he
break,
fronted
Graham.
up and took responsibility.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.